This world in fact does not exist. All the information and things we receive are through our five senses. The world we know is based on our eyes seeing something, our noses sniffing our tongues, our touching our hands, and our listening ears. But, have we ever thought our world is actually different from what our senses convey? Today research and science have found a remarkable understanding and raises doubts in our five senses. Science proves that the world we see and occupy is actually just a stimulus formed in our brain by an electrical signal, electrical impulse. A scientist Frederick Vester once said. Well-known philosopher George Berkeley once said. We believe in the existence of an object simply because we see and touch it, and it responds to us with our perceptions. However, our perception is just an idea in our minds. In other words, the object we see is just a perception or idea in our brain, meaning we have been deceived when we imagine this universe and these things exist in our outside world, outside the mind. To explain further, let us examine how our five senses work. When we see an object, then the light from that object, photon, will penetrate the lens of the eye where it will be inverted and continue to reach the retina. So, the image formed in the retina is actually in an upside-down state. So, the light image will be converted to electrical impulse, where it will be sent through neurons to a small point in the brain, cerebrum, called center vision. This is where the inverse signal and image will be interpreted and seen by the brain as our present vision. The fact is, the real place where the process of seeing takes place is brainwashed. What sees is not the eyes. What sees is the brain. Eyes are just a medium to see. There is no difference in function with contact lenses and glasses. If we still think of the eyes that see, why do we not say that it is actually our contact lenses or glasses that do the process of seeing? Their functions are the same. Three of them are medium in view. The same situation occurs in all our other five senses. All the stimuli and electrical signals from the five senses will each be sent to a specific point in the brain. Imagine. You are given an apple. You sniff, taste and touch the apple. If the nerves that connect the five senses with your brain are cut off, can you still see the apple is red? Can you smell the apple again? Can you still taste the sweetness of the apple? Of course not. The real fact is, the apple you taste sweet and red is just nothing more than an electrical signal, impulse. Try to imagine anyway. When the nerves from the senses of a car driver are connected in parallel to your brain, meaning the driver's nerves will send electrical impulses, signals to two brains. That is the driver's brain and your brain. If the driver is suddenly hit by a truck, surely you will see, hear and feel as if you were also hit by a truck, even though maybe at the time you were at home comfortably. You will also feel pain as a result of the violation due to electrical signals reaching the brain to be interpreted as pain. Events seem to be real or real. We will also feel if our brain is connected to a simulation device. For example, when the simulation device sends an electrical signal of the state we are bathing in the river, then we will feel as if we feel the cold river water, forest sounds and the beauty of nature at that time. Despite the fact that we are not actually in that place. In other words, the brain is actually the place where all things happen. The process of seeing, sniffing, feels, touching and hearing takes place in the brain. And each brain has a different way of interpreting information. If you understand this fact, there is another question that arises. What we feel when eating a meal is the same as other people eating the same food. Lincoln Barnett stated. Nobody knows how other people accept the color red or note C, music, as accepted by me. All the objects around us are a collection of perceptions in our brain. This means, we do not deal with the original or real things around us, the outside world, but we actually live in the copy formed in our brain. For you, reality is something that can be touched with the hands and seen with the eyes. In a dream you can also touch with your hands and see with your eyes. But the reality is, you do not have hands or eyes, nothing can be seen and touched. There is no material reality that makes these things happen except the brain. You have actually been deceived. When you read this verse, you are not actually in the room as you feel. But in fact the room is in you. Your brain makes your perception of being in the room. You look at your body, you feel you are in your body. No, your body is also a perception and an image formed in your brain. One thinker, Berkeley, once said, "At first it was believed that color, smell and so on really did exist, but then this view was rejected and it was found that it only exists depending on our senses." The question that arises: if the world we see is just a perception in our brain, then what exactly is there in the outside world? In fact we do not know, since all objects in our world are just a collection of perceptions and only exist in our minds. As if, the only real world that exists is the perceptual world. Surely the question that will arise is, if everything is perception, what about the brain, which is also one of the limbs? The answer is, it is also a perception like other objects. This can be explained by a dream. In a dream we have an imaginary limb. Like imaginary hands and imaginary brains, if in a dream someone asks, "What do you think it uses?" you answer, "Using your brain." In fact, there is no real brain to talk about. It's just an imaginary brain in your dreams. It is quite difficult to understand. Try to take time and think well too. So, if the brain itself is perceptual, who receives, sees and feels all this? When the brain is analyzed, it turns out that there is nothing in it except lipid molecules, fats, and proteins, and there are neurons in it. This means there are no special molecules for viewing images, interpreting sounds, and so on. According to R. L. Gregory, a picture processed in the brain requires the inner eye to see it. But the brain needs another inner eye to see its picture. The problem: who owns the inner eye? Who is the real recipient of all this? If it is not the brain that receives or becomes the inner eye, do the atoms see these images? No. Because atoms are blind, deaf and dead. Clearly, the recipient, the inner eye, and this existence transcend material existence. This existence is alive and it is not an image and a perception. In fact, this existence is spirit. Now we can conclude. All we see in this world is only perceptions too seen by the spirit. But who created this perception? The law of creation proves that things do not have self-governing existence by themselves. These perceptions are certainly created by other powers. It is impossible to inspire this perception from the point of view of the spirit itself. There must be something that makes our souls see perceptions such as stars, plants and others. This is proof of the existence of the Supreme Creator of God that scientists cannot deny. This means that only Allah is in the outside world and only Allah is the only one that exists. So, if you manage to understand so far, surely you understand the meaning of the phrase Allah is everywhere. And to Allah belongs the East and the West, so wherever you face then that is the face of Allah. Lo! Allah is all-embracing, all-knowing. Al-Baqarah, 115. You will also understand where God really is and where hell and heaven are located. Contrary to the misconception of society that says God lives in heaven and some think God is behind the planet too. That is why man cannot, or it is impossible to see God on earth. But God can see us and even know our every move. Word of God. He is invisible to the naked eye, and he sees all things, and he is the subtle, the merciful. Surah Al-An'am, 103. When we witness sensory perceptions in our lives, the existence closest to us is not these senses and not ourselves, but God. The secret of the next verse in the Quran explains this reality. And verily, we have created man, and we are well acquainted with what his heart whispers, while, knowledge, we are closer to him than the veins of his neck. Surah Kaf, 16. Anyone who successfully understands this matter is considered to have been able to move away from the material world that deceives most people and has entered the realm of real existence, Wadah al-Wujud. Hopefully with this entry, we can get to know better who we are and we know more about our Creator and the purpose of our life. So, what are we really chasing in the world? Science itself proves that this world is a mere deception. It is just a perception that seems to be real while nothing else is just a deceptive illusion. Try to reflect for a moment on all this. Try to look around us, everything is a perception. So, what else do we pursue in the world? All those possessions do not exist, the senses deceive us. Property, women and rank are all just a perception and in fact do not exist. Let us return to the question of why we live. Let us remember the purpose of God created us. And if when we are busy with worldly affairs, ask yourself, what else are you looking for?